how do you find the motivation to continue and embrace your hardships? The older I get, the more interested I am in the couch, not the elements. I love a couch as well. So I find that the hardships are what brings out the best in me, and I am super proud and love the person that I am when I have overcome those hardships. And so I guess, you know, first of all, I'm still curious to see how much more I can achieve as a human being. But secondly, that feeling of pride, that kind of knowing that I have exceeded maybe my own expectations. Yeah, I love that feeling, and it's slightly addictive, I think. Thank you, wherever you are. Thank you for your blind faith. That's quite a good question, because I think fear is something that I have to manage a lot. And it's not necessarily fear for my life. There aren't really any times when I have feared for my life. And a lot of that really is just being very confident in the knowledge that I have a boat that is the right sort of boat for the conditions in the environment. B, it's been prepared in a suitable way for the conditions in the environment. And then I'm falling back on my own skill and experience and making sure I understand where the line is between you know, risk and rewards, pushing too hard, you know, doing something foolish that I'm not sure I can get out of. I think, you know, for me, fear is more about I'm frightened of injuring myself. That's terrifying. And I am frightened of failing, but never really frightened for my life. So the first race of 2022 is going to be in May. It starts on May the 8th. It's called the Bermude 1000 race, and it's a single-handed race starting in Douarnenez in Brittany. It goes on a course normally out to the Fastnet Rock, down to the Azores and back. Yes, I do. Music is actually really important to me. Music, I find, it's a great motivator. It also enables me to change my mood. You know, if I find sometimes that I'm kind of just heading off down one maybe slightly negative thought train, I can actually change my mood with music. It just helps me turn my brain off, but it also kind of just breathes some sort of different, I guess, feeling into me. And the other thing is that it really connects me when I'm away. It connects me with my friends and family at home, because they all make me playlists and I think of them when I'm playing the music, however bad it is. And who's played the most? Daft Punk. You cannot beat Daft Punk Under the Stars when the boat is absolutely cranking. It's amazing. Yes, we are looking at changing our foils. So the objective for 2022 is for me to make the most of the boat that I have. And we have small foils relative to the other boats in the fleet because they're first generation foils. And my foils that are currently on Medallia were only designed to lift half the weight of the boat. So it's kind of like semi-flying. So this year I'm just getting to know those foils and to use those foils. And we are working with designers this year to produce some next generation foils that will be fitted at the beginning of 2023. We are looking at shape, and we're also looking at the bow shape as well. And one of the challenges that kind of all of the sailors are facing is how do we stop that big crash down, and how do we make the foils a little bit more kind of all-rounders rather than just for reaching. But we'll be sharing some really good stories and news about that later in the year. I think the most important message I have is that and it's so, you know, it's not my message, this is common wisdom, but you know, it is that you have to start somewhere. And actually sometimes, you know, making that first attempt to do something is the most difficult part of it. But it took me quite a long time to realize that my first race, my first journey, my first attempt at solo sailing didn't have to be gold plated. You know, I spent a long time looking at what everybody else had, trying to work out how I would get that, not realizing that I didn't have to have that. Just doing something is better than doing nothing. So I think don't wait for people to offer you opportunities. Create your own opportunities. Don't undervalue the small opportunities, because they are pathways to growth. And also, you know, believe that you belong there. If you're passionate about it and it makes you feel good about yourself, believe that you belong there, and just go and embrace it and enjoy it. The Southern Ocean was quite a revelation to me, because I thought I was going to hate it, and I didn't, which was pleasing, seeing as I was there for more than half of the race. I think for me, it was about being in the moment and remembering why I was there. You know, remembering what my objectives were, remembering the path that had taken me there and how much I'd put into it. And so, you know, I was very busy. I was very focused on racing. I was very focused on getting the most out of my boat. I think one of the more challenging things actually about the Southern Ocean was the time difference, because when I was in the Northern Hemisphere, you know, my team were awake at the same time as me, and so, you know, there was a bit of banter. If I wanted it, I could send someone a little text message and I'd get something back, and so there was kind of that banter on tap. But in the Southern Ocean, when I, you know, during the days, then my team were asleep, and I didn't want to bother anybody, and I, you know, I wouldn't have particularly, you know, wanted to just kind of send a stupid message to someone and expected to get a reply, because, you know, when you send messages to people in the middle of the night, they tend to panic. So that was probably one of the more challenging things. But I think it was just kind of keeping focused on the job in hand, making sure that I was enjoying those great moments, and just remembering that I'd chosen to be there, and I'd worked really hard, and lots of other people had worked really hard to get there, and my friends and family would all be watching and were all there in support of me, just not physically there with me. Good question. I struggle more in the calm than I do in big breeze, because it's frustration. You know, when you're racing, you want to be moving. You need to be moving. And having a boat that is stuck. And the problem with these boats is there's a huge surface area in contact with the water, which makes them really sticky, really draggy. And so when you do stop, it's actually quite hard to get the boat going. When it's going, it carries momentum, so you need less wind to keep it going, but to actually get it going is quite an effort. And then there's all the kind of noise as well, because there's this when the boat rolls around, there's this flogging and banging, and it just gets in your head, and you imagine that every other boat on the fleet has this incredible breeze and is clocking up miles against you, and actually in the calms I find it harder to manage my brain than anything else. So yeah, give me some wind. It's probably mast climbing. Climbing the mast is, in my whole career sailing, I've had to solo mast climb 5 times on different size boats. every single time it has given me the biggest questions over what the hell I am doing, because it's terrifying. I hate it. I mean, I really hate it. I cannot begin to explain how awful it is to be, 25 meters up in the air on a boat that's still sailing, and then it's going to take you 30 minutes to get down to the deck if something goes wrong. And if something goes catastrophically wrong, you really doubt whether you could sort it out from where you are up there. And each time I have climbed the mast, I've basically had to do this. I go through it quite methodically. I do this kind of like question and answer session with myself, and I address all of my fears. What are you frightened of? Why are you frightened of it? Why should you not be frightened of it? And I just have to go through. I have to convince myself that the conditions are right. I have to convince myself that it is essential for me to go up the mast. I have to talk through what happens if I don't. I have to remind myself of all the training. And the last time I climbed the mast, which was on the return trip up the Atlantic in the Vendée Globe, it actually took me 2.5 hours of self-talk to clip onto that rope and get up the mast. And I don't think that's ever going to be any easier, but I think those are the times when I doubt myself the most, probably. Sleep, really, you're trying to get as much sleep as you can all the time, and it does depend on conditions, and it depends how fast the boat's going, whether there's traffic, what kind of lies ahead for the next couple of days. It can be quite strategic. Certainly with the boats that travel at the speeds that we do, you don't really want to sleep for longer than kind of 30 to 40 minutes, because things change. It's fairly it's fairly usual to have a significant change within 30 or 40 minutes, either traffic on the horizon or a change in the wind or something like that. So that time is kind of set as the longest period we would aim to sleep for, but then kind of I'll have blocks of sleep depending on how stable conditions are. So I may look at the forecast and say, okay, I've got a 6-hour window here where I can bank as much sleep as possible, and then I might be doing kind of 30 minutes, wake up, have a look around, 30 minutes, wake up, have a look around. But if conditions aren't stable, then I might only do 30 minutes every 6 hours or something like that. So it really does depend. It's quite strategic, and it depends on conditions. So I think, and this is not just my thoughts, obviously I work with a personal trainer, I work with Rob Stewart, and we are focusing on big muscle groups. So for me, because I have to move big weights around, but also when you're sailing, you're often in difficult positions, you're unevenly balanced. And so we work a lot on making sure that my back is very strong. So we do lots of squats, I do deadlifting, and then in terms of working on my upper body, press ups are brilliant, and I also do bench pressing as well. So it's kind of the larger muscle groups, very focused on keeping stability in my core and protecting my back. And then I do heaps of cardio, but I don't do that with my personal trainer. I do that on my own, because I just don't think you can beat cardio fitness to help with endurance. I'm looking forward to all of the races, but for different reasons. The first race of the season is going to be special for me because it's the first race in the new boat, the Bermuda 1000, but I'm going to be taking it easy. The last race of the season is the Route du Rhum. It's a really special race in the French calendar. There's an incredible atmosphere on St Malo. I've never done that race, so it's kind of a big tick in a box for me. But equally, I'm sort of slightly terrified of it as well, because it is my last race of the season, and I'm really keen to put in a good result. And so I think I am going to feel quite a bit of pressure around that race. But also in the middle of the season, we've got the Round Britain and Ireland race, which I'm going to do fully crewed. So there'll be 5 of us on board. It's a great course. It'll be the 3rd time I've done that race. And I'm looking forward to sharing that experience with other sailors and pushing the boat really hard in a different way. So I think in terms of enjoyment, I'm going to get a lot out of the season. Biggest competitor, that's at the moment. So I think what we're going to be looking at are the boats that are similar to mine. So we'll be looking at Roman Atanasio in Fortinet. So he has same hull design as me, but big foils. And Roman has come out of a non-foiling boat. But kind of he's about 6 months ahead of me in his program, and a whole Vendée ahead of me in a wider program. So he's a good benchmark. And then we have Giancarlo in Group Prizeman. So again, exactly the same boat. And he has the same size foils as me, but he's looking at upgrading. Obviously, he's already done a Vendée in that boat. And then we have Fabrice Amadeo in New Rest. Same boat, but he's upgrading his foils earlier than me. So we've got a really good, interesting set of boats to benchmark against. And for me, you know, I think because they're upgrading their foils ahead of us, then it's kind of it's a nice place to be, because I'm always going to be chasing them, and I'm quite good at chasing people. Yes, we have been sailing on the new boat, and we have foiled. Last year we actually didn't have. We've had some good conditions, but not amazing conditions. So I haven't really ever pushed the boat hard foiling. And I'm hoping to have the conditions in early season training in Portugal in April to really go out and see what they can do. We are hoping to launch at the beginning of March. We will have some new sails to try out. We will have changed our electronics package, and then we are heading to Portugal to do some early season training. And there's going to be a whole heap of stuff going on there. So training for me, I'm going to be working with coaches, kind of learning how I can get the most out of the boat, getting other people's opinions on it. But then also as a team, we're going to be working, you know, looking at our new sails, kind of adjusting according to those. We've changed some of the layout inside. We've slightly changed how we're charging the batteries. So there's going to be an ongoing program of training and development through the whole of April intensively, but then that will follow on through the whole year. I don't know. I don't know if we're going to again. We might. I love anything outside. I hate being indoors. I really hate being indoors. Massive trail runner, really enjoy that. And I enjoy off-road biking a lot too. And this winter I've been trying to learn to wing foil as well, so bad wing foiling. And then just kind of hanging out with my mates. I really enjoy, you know, sitting down, having a chat and having a laugh. The knowledge that I could do better. and I want to know how much better. I finished the Vendée Globe absolutely adamant I wanted to do another one, and the reason was because I knew I could put in a better performance. And so much of this Vendée Globe was about experiencing the unknown and trying to understand if, as a person, I was capable of delivering a single-handed round the world race. The answer was yes, and I really enjoyed it. And now I want to know how much better I could be. So what motivates me is the fact that there's still so much to learn, to improve on, to develop on, and I want to push harder and further and see where we end up. I didn't actually do my first solo sail until I was 35 years old. I'd done a lot of double-handed miles, loads, but never a solo journey. And actually my first solo journey was transatlantic from Uruguay to the UK. So yeah, typically it wasn't, it was in with both feet at the deep end. It was both exciting and terrifying. I went through a lot. It was 6 weeks, and I went through a lot. I learned a lot, but it was just something I really needed to do. I had been dreaming my whole life of this race that I wanted to do, and I believed that I could do it, and I believed I would be good at it. But I needed to prove to myself that wasn't just some idle dream. And so, I guess it was terrifying in two ways. One was because, I was completely out in the middle of the ocean. I had no sat phone, no comms. I was really, really on my own. And I guess it was terrifying because I had to address every problem and demonstrate to myself that I was capable. But also it was terrifying in a way because it was me it was it was testing my dream. If that hadn't have gone well, then the dream that I'd held since I was 17 was just a dream. And so actually doing that is quite terrifying as well. I don't really do anything else. I don't read books. I don't watch movies. I do listen to audiobooks, and I listen to music, and I sing. When no one can hear me, I sing very loud. But other than that, I just like sailing. I decided to do the Vendée Globe when I first read about it, which was at the first edition, and I was 17 years old. And I read about it. I was stunned by what an incredibly difficult race it was, and especially in comparison, at the time it was kind of when the Whitbread was at its height, and the Whitbread was sailed on 60-foot boats. Some of them were bigger, but they had 60-foot boats in there that were crewed by 14 men, and they were short legs. They stopped everywhere. And then all of a sudden I was reading about a race where one person was sailing a 60-foot boat on their own non-stop around the world. I mean, that was taking the Whitbread and adding the chocolate sprinkles and the cherry and a whole pile of fruit and nuts on top of it, and making it into the hardest race you could possibly imagine. And there were women doing it as well, and that, for me, I just read it and went, I'm going to do that. And I was 17 years old, and I lived in a landlocked county, and I don't know why I thought I could do it, but I did. How did I learn to do knots? I think, do you know what? I think I might have learned knots at Brownies, maybe. I don't know, in a village hall in Cambridgeshire, probably. And What 3 should any sailor do blindfolded? Okay, so my 3 top knots, round turn and 2 half hitches. Absolutely have to be able to do one of those. A clove hitch and, oh no, scratch that, a rolling hitch and a bowline. Those 3 knots. You could do anything with those. Absolutely, it is possible after turning 30. I did not start competing in solo racing until I was 35 years old. Before then, I had raced as part of crews, but I'd never had my own campaign. So you can start whenever you want. How do you start? I mean, I think the most difficult thing is, if you're running your own campaign, the most difficult thing is getting a boat. And then I would just look at the budget that you have, work out how you can best get a boat, whether you're chartering a boat or buying a boat, and then try and map out a program that will fit to your budget rather than trying to raise a budget to fit to your program. Because if the goal is just starting, and I'm a great believer that actually if you start something, then you're more likely to be able to take the next step and grow it and develop it, rather than trying to go in, you know, at step 5, start at step 1. And then there are plenty of opportunities out there. If you're thinking about solo sailing, the mini transat is incredible, because you can enter the mini transat in an older boat or a brand new boat, and the budget for an older boat is you know, much less. They're small boats, so they don't cost so much to keep, and there is an incredibly collaborative spirit around mini sailing. If you're looking at crewed racing, then it's probably a question of, if you haven't got your own boat, go down to a sailing club, find a nice, friendly, accommodating sailing club, go down and talk to people and just make yourself useful. Don't be too proud to do anything on the boat. You know, make yourself useful, offer to come down and help on refit days. You know, make sure that you're the person that puts the covers on at the end of the day. You know, get involved, show that you're keen, show that you're willing, and you will get snapped up by a team. But mostly make sure what you do, you are enjoying it, because all of this, you know, all the sailing experience, it's not, it may look from the outside in like, you know, it's just a kind of rugged grin and bear it kind of sport, but actually, you know, it's fantastic. It's a fantastic way to grow and develop as a person, but also being out on the water is a beautiful experience. So if you're not enjoying it, change and do something different, do a different kind of sailing, or find a different event to do, but just make sure you enjoy it.